Welcome to the Journey to CEO Success. I'm your co host, Melissa Saunders, and I'm joined by Patrick Tian, award winning serial entrepreneur, renowned CEO coach, and best selling author, recognized by the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Amazon. Patrick's greatest book, The Journey to CEO Success, is a #1 Amazon bestseller and the inspiration behind this podcast. Patrick, it's great to have you here. Hello.
It's great, man. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
And joining us today, we have a real treat. Her name is Prema Gupta. Prema is the president and CEO of the Center City District in Philadelphia. The CCD for short is a downtown management district that provides security, cleaning, placemaking, and planning services, as well as streetscape and park improvements for the Central Business District of Philadelphia. She oversees all aspects of the CCD's planning, strategy, economic development, and operations. Sounds like a busy lady. Welcome, Prema, to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be with you both.
Yeah, so Prima, first I want to thank you so much for joining us on this show. Thank you for making time for us. And I want to start with, before we get into your personal journey, I want to start with you sharing with us a quick picture. What does City Center District actually do?
Sure, of course. And Melissa, thank you for that great introduction. I think you covered it really well. Center City District it's an NGO, basically, that is focused on stewarding, improving, and advocating for downtown Philadelphia. So at our core, we are very much an operational organization. We supplement city services with sidewalk cleaning, with some public safety patrols, with sidewalk hospitality. We manage parks, and then we have a variety of different promotional programs to improve, enhance, drive activity downtown.
So what is the actual mission for that?
Yeah, I mean, the mission of the organization is that we are, we're funded by private property owners. They all pay us a assessment. Most downtowns in North America have business improvement districts. We are a business improvement district. For example, John Scholes runs Seattle, my colleague, and he runs Seattle's business improvement district, and he's absolutely terrific. And I think it's just, to enhance downtown services so that visitors, residents, people coming downtown to work, just get some extra services, because we know there are more eyes downtown than there are in different parts of the city.
So what is it about this job that really excites you? Why are you doing it? So it's a better way of asking the question. Why are you doing it?
Cities. I don't know how to say it, how else to say it. I grew up in a very small town in Connecticut where there wasn't a lot of vibrancy. Candidly, there weren't very many people who looked like me. And I discovered cities when I was in college. And it's been a lifelong love affair. And I think Philadelphia is a place with a lot of diversity, a lot of color, a lot of vibrancy. And it just feels like such a privilege to work to tell that story, but also enhance and improve the great city that we have here.
When you get into a job like yours,
Yeah.
you get to initially, and after a short time, you begin to really figure out what impact you really want to make in the time that you have it, right? I'm
Yeah.
wondering what that was like for you. So let's get into your journey now, but we'll go backwards. Now we'll start from where you are right now, because I'm just so interested about the work you do right now and improving the downtown, that city. When you mentioned your friend doing it here for Seattle, I live in Seattle, so that hit close to my heart because I live right in downtown. I mean, I'm in Belltown, which is right next to downtown. So
such a great neighborhood.
Yeah. So what was your vision? I'm curious when you took the job, what your vision was, and whether anything changed or anything really excited you beyond what you initially thought.
Yeah, of course. I mentioned this earlier, but we're very much an operational organization. The property owners that pay into Center City District expect our team to clean their sidewalks 3 times a day, make things comfortable and hospitable, inviting, clean, green. And so it's that. And I think a lot of the work, in some ways, I don't want to say feels defensive, but feels operational. We're trying to manage challenges that are downtown. A lot of American downtowns have similar challenges as it relates to, homelessness, etc. And I think, that's a big part of the role. But I think one of the things that's occurred to me as I've been here is we can't just be an operational organization, because no one wants to write a story about, people who clean sidewalks 3 times a day. We also need to drive a narrative of optimism and progress and change. And I do think in this thing, and maybe we could talk a little bit more about this, but in this weird time in American history where people are on their phones and they get their information in weird ways. We need to break through that and tell a great story about downtown. So an example of that, and this is a project that I feel very personally passionate about. Patrick, if you've traveled, if you've gone to Europe, if you've gone to cities in Latin America, you know that the shopping streets in those places are wonderful places to stroll and be a pedestrian and really feel like an extension of public space. For whatever reason, well, I could tell you why, but that might be a little off topic. In the United States, we have dedicated the space between buildings on our downtown shopping streets, for the most part, to cars and to going through and not lingering and relaxing. And I think we've all been to these places in different cities, whether it's Mexico City or Madrid or, somewhere in Italy, where you stroll these beautiful pedestrian streets. And, you tend to see a lot more of that happening in the United States these days. And so we have been launching, one of the programs that I'm proudest of is something that we've started. We've borrowed the name Open Street, which seems to be a little bit of a movement in American cities. And we've run this as an experiment. And we're now up to, I think, 20 or 25 of them. But we've closed our main shopping street where all the, the Lululemon and the Apple Store and all of our great retailers are, to traffic on Sundays. And we've collected a huge amount of data to see how the stores do, what pedestrian counts are like, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a great experience if you're there. But I think people are really craving progress and positive stories. And so it's really just played this outsized impact in shaping people's perceptions of what it's like downtown. And I think that's been really important. So again, we're paid to take on this operational role, but that doesn't mean we can't also carve out opportunities to be strategic drivers of change.
Yeah, operational excellence is really awesome. In fact, my books are all about execution, and execution is really all about operations and getting it done right. So in my methodology, I talk about thinking, planning, and doing. And in business, a lot of people love the think and plan part, but not so much the do part. But I like to say nothing actually happens until you do the work. So you can plan all day, you can dream and think all day, but if you don't do the work, it doesn't happen. So I want to congratulate you because you've said it multiple times already. Operational, and nobody celebrates the people cleaning the streets, but we should.
We should. I agree. We should.
So let's celebrate them. Today on my podcast, on my show, let's celebrate them cleaning the streets, because that's kind of stuff that we don't really realize unless it's not done, right?
No, thank you for that.
Like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Yeah.
I totally agree. And I appreciate that so much. And I often say in this job, I don't have bad days. If I see myself getting grumpy or something, I will go outside and I'll go for a walk, and I will inevitably run into one of our sidewalk cleaners and we'll strike up a conversation with them. And they're just, I stand to learn a lot from their attitude about work and, their mindset about going through the day. They're the loveliest people you'll ever meet. And it pains me to see their work unseen and unrecognized. So thank you for taking a moment and clapping for them, Patrick.
Totally. And then let's talk about your personal journey. I can see that you really found your passion, your niche, whatever you love to do. And I have two daughters that they're in the working world now, and 26, 27 years old, 23 years old. And I tell them that if you're lucky enough to find a job that you love, where the job is more fun and it's play, then the job is never a job, right? If your job is fun, it's play, it's never a job. And you seem to have discovered that for yourself here. How did you do that?
I wouldn't say this about every day, certainly, but most days I do wake up in the morning and say, I can't believe I get paid to do this job and work with these amazing people.
Yes.
I agree. It's funny. I have a daughter too, who's a rising senior in high school and is similarly trying to figure out, how to pursue passions. Again, I am, encouraging her to figure out a career where she's also economically viable. So we're kind of having those conversations in our house. And going back to, your question of my path, like I really don't have any ground to stand on because I was an art history major in college and I've always sort of pursued a path. I've always worked very hard and been very curious, but I've always pursued what interested me and maybe like not take the consulting job that I probably should have. Well, I don't want to say should have because there's nowhere I'd rather be, but perhaps was a more obvious and traditional path out of undergrad, etc. But it's always just following what's of interest, and what I'm curious about has suited me really well. So I hope that she too is able to afford a house pursuing her interest someday.
So you took the path that followed your interests, your
Mhm.
passion, and I think that is wise. And that is usually lots of us are given that choice of, hey, this seems to be the typical path, the path that will make us, how did you put it, financially or economically viable. I
It's
think
not
that's how you said it, right? I like that. I shall remember that for my children. So economically viable. And sometimes the other path of pursuing our passion and our interests doesn't seem initially that viable. One thing I've learned in my own life is that you can
Mhm.
actually be economically viable in anything. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the beauty of, especially living in the United States. You can actually be economically viable in anything, because if you really are interested in that and you work hard at it, and work becomes fun. You see things, and you use the word curious too. I think interest and curious coming together can discover things that just help us become economically viable. I've seen it happen, over and over again with entrepreneurs that find the joy in all kinds of little things that nobody thought about, and then suddenly, boom, they figured
Mhm.
out how to make that economically viable, and actually more than viable. They become very, very successful. So following your interest and following your curiosity is what led you here. So if you could go back, what advice would you give your younger self on how to get on this path? Because I'm sure there were times when you were at the crossroads and you were faced with the Cheshire cat, and you're like, hey, should I take this path, cat, or should I take that path, cat, right? So what advice would you give yourself when you go back those moments when you made those pivotal decisions? How did you do that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't know if this makes me different from some of your other guests, but in some ways, I feel that I'm kind of an accidental CEO and an accidental leader. I don't know that I've ever, I mean, maybe in the last five or so years, but I've never had like huge ambitions for myself. I tend to be very like intrinsically motivated, and just, I want to see progress. I want to see change. I want to, do things, but I don't know. I mean, I guess what advice would I have for myself? I mean, I
Yeah.
would love to go back and say, like, if you believe, you're not going to believe this, but someday you're going to be a CEO. Cause I don't know that I ever saw that for myself.
Yes.
And it wasn't even like a failure. It wasn't like I didn't see myself in this role. It was more like I wasn't interested. No, this is a terrible answer to your question, Patrick. I'm sorry. But I think like, I would the advice I'd give myself is sort of trust your gut and follow what is of interest, and kind of, go all in and have fun and be curious.
Yes. And what thoughts do you have about leadership? You must have certain beliefs about leadership that over the last years have really helped you succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. Something I learned from, my parents was I treat everyone I meet exactly the same way, whether, you are the CEO of Comcast or, one of our sidewalk cleaners. I mean, first of all, it's easier to treat everyone the same way with the same
Yes.
amount of kindness and respect. But I really, don't, and I say this to my daughter all the time. No, you're not better than anyone, but no one's better than you. And
Mm,
this is a quote from someone else, and I'm sorry I can't attribute it, but everyone you meet knows something you don't know, and has something
yeah.
they can teach you, and just finding out what that is and connecting with them. So I think, for me, leadership is sort of, kindness and empathy, and trying to figure out a team, and you're trying to create the conditions so a team can perform really well. My son, I have a 13-year-old son, and he's a baseball player, and he's sort of at that point where he's sort of on the cusp of puberty, and like baseball has changed because some kids are, at the age of 13 at various stages along puberty, and some of them can pitch at 85 miles an hour, and some of them, are still tiny. And and he's just kind of been putting a lot of pressure on himself, and he's just been beating himself up over his hitting slump. And I said to him, I was like, you need to have fun. You're
Yes.
not going to perform well because you're putting pressure on yourself, and you need to get a hit at every at bat. You need to just like think about and connect with what you love about the game. Is it like the teamwork? Is it like is it the sound of the bat? Is it just connect with the fun? Because
Yes.
you always, I do think as a leader, you need to create the conditions so your team can thrive, and just keep things fun and keep things kind of happy and relaxed. And I think respect boundaries is really important. And I think, recognize that nearly everyone who works with you probably has something, one hopes, has something in their life more important than work, and honor and recognize that.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things you said that I want to key on a little bit here.
Yeah.
Fun
Yeah.
and curiosity. You mentioned the word curiosity or curious about at least 3 times on this discussion already. And I think that's
I'm a
really good.
Ted Lasso fan. You may have figured that out already.
No, so in my book, right, my new book, I talk about 7 practices that will help every CEO have a successful journey.
Mm,
And practice number 1 is curiosity, is being
mm,
curious. And what I've been thinking hard about and discovered actually is that when you are genuinely curious about something, I don't have to teach you how to listen, because I get so many leaders that call me and say, Patrick, my team tells me I'm not listening well enough. Can you teach
mm,
me how to be a better listener? And what I've realized is that you don't have to be a better listener. Sure, you can use all the techniques. I can make sure I make eye contact. I can make
mhm,
sure I'm not looking at another screen while I'm doing something. But actually the secret is, if you have genuine interest, and I think interest comes from curiosity. So if you can actually put a seed of curiosity, have
mhm.
genuine interest, I don't have to teach you how to listen. I really don't. Because because
Right.
because you have
Yeah.
the listening if you're interested, right? If you're curious about that. And
So what's
so
the second tool
the second thing that I'm sorry, what's the second one?
after curiosity?
Oh, the second one is to level up, is to continue to grow yourself
Mm, mhm,
continuously, because the companies that we run, they grow continuously. And if you as a leader, your growth is not at least equal or faster than the growth of your
mm,
company, the company
mhm,
outgrows you and you become the rev limiter of the
mm.
firm. And so the first 2 practices are really about working on yourself, because I believe that if you don't, frankly, if you don't work on yourself, I don't think you have the right to work on anybody else.
Right.
And I have gotten some CEOs that call me and say, Patrick, I need your help. My people are terrible. I need you to work on them. And after all that, I'll be like, okay, well, what about you?
Right.
What about you? Let's look at. So I believe that first you're going to work on yourself. And I think that
Yeah.
being curious and having a continuous growth process is the best way to continue working on yourself. So those are the first 2 practices.
Mhm,
And I love what you said about fun. And I think that sometimes when work gets hard and we get stressed, that's when we stop having fun. Think about that.
mm.
Like that's when we stop having fun. And my dad in the old days had always accused me of not being serious enough. Like we'll be doing something and it'll be really serious and I'll make a joke and my dad will look at me and say, what, is this funny to you? Is everything a joke for you? And I said, no,
Mhm.
Dad, not funny for me, but it can be. And then we laugh and he's like, I'm trying not to laugh. This is serious. But I've always believed that if you can add in a dose of fun, you can solve a lot of problems. And I've noticed, my daughter's interviewing for something, and like I said, don't be nervous about it. In fact, it really hard to. It's worse when someone's nervous, right? And you say, "Hey, Prima, don't be nervous." Like, I'm nervous. What do you mean by don't be nervous? It's like when you're stressed and you go, "Hey, don't be stressed." Like, do you think I don't know that? I'm stressed. So, but I've found that instead of saying that, I've always said, "Look, let's just have some fun."
Mhm,
And I still remember my interview with Oracle. I started my career at Oracle
mhm,
Corporation in
mhm.
1998, and I realized I'm a hardware engineer by training at
Oh,
school.
wow. Uh-huh.
So when I realized I was interviewing for a software job, I said, I don't really want this job. I'm not. And so I started having fun with the interviewer, and I wasn't disrespectful. I was just having fun, and I asked him questions about the software that they did. And by the time my interview was over, the guy said to me, Patrick, I'd like to invite you for the next interview. So I was like, what just happened? Like, I was just having fun. I didn't think this was going to be serious. And that's one thing I realized was that I did better. And I don't know if this applies to everybody, but definitely applies to me and quite a few people I know, that
Mhm,
I do better when I take myself a whole lot less seriously and try and have some fun, right? It's like, and that's my
right.
point anyway. And it sounds like it's similar to yours, curiosity and fun. Put those 2 together and boom,
Yeah.
we have you.
I think when you have fun, one of the things you do is you turn off or you limit that voice in your head that's saying, Patrick, you need to nail this interview. My son
Yeah,
Ren, you need to hit the next
right.
pitch.
Right.
Prima, you need to nail this podcast. And if you that voice often doesn't serve a productive purpose. And I think if you kind of let go and sort of like go with the flow, as they say, I think it tends to be better. But I think, for those of us that are like high achieving, it is hard to turn off that voice.
I think it's hard to turn off the voice because, and now we're getting deep into philosophy, which I did not expect on this show. But I think it's hard to turn off the voice because we don't want to fail. We want to succeed. We want to achieve the best we can. And it's almost counterintuitive, but by being so focused on being the best at this moment, we actually don't show up as well as if we just chill, relax, and have some fun and allow yourself, your true self to be. That's what I've discovered. If you allow your true self to be, people want that authenticity. They want that sincerity. They want to know who the real you is. So, hey, I want to thank you so much for making time for us. And this show is all about helping CEOs have a more joyful and successful journey. And I could talk with you all day long. You've been an amazing guest, but I want to know, what advice would you like to leave our audience for them to have a more joyful and successful journey through life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something I think a lot about is work-life balance. And I think it's important to say, in an hour of a day, I don't have work-life balance. Why should I expect to have work-life balance over the course of a week or even a year? I think it kind of over the long run, you need to have work-life balance. I mean, I mentioned a little while ago that I have a child that, knock on wood, hopefully will be going to college in a year. And I have sort of made the decision. I'm saying no to everything that I don't have to do over the next year because I want to soak up as much time with her as I possibly can. And a lot of those, non-core work, non-core things will still be there when she's off at college. And then I will certainly need more things to do. So I think I take the long view when it comes to work-life balance, and that's been helpful. There are periods of time that are really, really busy, and there are periods of time when you can be more present at home.
I want to thank you for that, Prema. I've never heard it said the way you said it. I'd like you to actually elaborate on that a little bit more. You said work-life balance, and you said something about like if you can't do it for that 1 hour, you can't do it like in the long either. Can you share a little bit more about that? That's very insightful.
Sure, I appreciate that. I don't know how insightful it is, but thank you. I think for women in particular, especially women like me who have school-age children, there is this sort of focus around narratives on work-life balance. You need to take care of yourself. You need to be present for your children. You need to be, successful at work. You need to have board involvement, whatever it is. And I don't, you need to be, I shouldn't have forgotten my husband. You need to have, a happy, successful, balanced partnership at home too. And I think it's hard to do all of those every hour or every day or every week, but I think it is possible over a longer period of time. There are certainly days where, my kids don't see me. And there are certainly days where they see too much of me and let me know that. But I think it's important, particularly for women, because I think in this capacity, at least, we're a little harder on ourselves to just take a longer view and be fully present when you're with your kids and keep that phone far, far away. And, give yourself grace when being a CEO is busy.
Wow. Thank you so much, Prema. Hey, Melissa, back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us today, Prema, and sharing your perspective and your experience. I love the fact that you reminded us to maybe slow down when we actually go through a downtown area and stop and have dinner and maybe catch a live band or two. So remember to do that, you guys. Go to Philadelphia and see those nice, clean streets and go out to dinner and maybe grab a drink. So, and thank you to everyone listening to the Journey to CEO Success today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe. Join us next time for another conversation with what it takes to really grow, lead, succeed, and be happy doing it. Until next time, bye for now.